is Nicole Ball. I work here at the library. I'm actually the teen librarian here. But I'm leading a program very unrelated to teens, usually. We're going to talk about birding for beginners today. So you might be thinking, how does a teen librarian get to talking about birds? And I was mentioning to Bob earlier that I used to be the head naturalist at Pokagon State Park. So I did that for 6 years before I came to work here. So nature is near and dear to my heart. Birding has become near and dear to my heart. This is a picture at our nature center. If you haven't been inside the Pokagon Nature Center, it has a 20-foot birding window, bird observation window, where people can come and just watch the bird feeders. So that was a daily chore that we did. Not a chore, it was a lot of fun actually, to fill all of the feeders, and you get to watch them. And when part of your job is watching birds and identifying them and teaching people about them, it just becomes so much fun to watch them. So I've really taken to birding within the last 10 years or so. But I wanted to ask you guys, what made you want to participate in this program? Do you already enjoy bird watching? Are you getting...
We camp a lot, and
okay.
we love watching the birds, and we keep a feeder or suet or something in the backyard always to be able to see hummingbirds or whatever.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And when I can, I like to hype a lot like them and kayak as well.
Mm-hmm.
And probably years and years ago, I probably knew the name of a lot of these birds, but I've since forgotten.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of want to really remind myself. I do enjoy watching all animals out in nature, actually, not just the birds as well. But I find them kind of fascinating, since they're the only thing on Earth that can actually fly, unless you got an airplane. I think it's pretty cool how they can do that.
Yes, they're very, very fascinating animals. Yep. Well, anything you want to share?
I think I know a lot about the birds, but I figure if I come here, I might learn something more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Well, thank you. Megan, anything that you enjoy about birds?
Oh, yes. Well, lots. The house we moved into has huge windows, and we're always putting out bird seed, and so I just want to know more about what birds are coming to see us, and and I can name them for Leo, and
Cool. Well, I found this meme, maybe you saw it as I skipped through it. I just love this. It says, one day you're young and carefree, the next you're like, is that a tufted titmouse at my bird feeder? And I don't know when that shift happens, but usually younger folks aren't as interested in birds, although I've met a lot of young people who are. But it seems like that you reach an age where you maybe just have a better appreciation for them. I think part of it, of course they're adorable and cute, but also you just learn how smart they are when you start to learn about how they survive in these extreme climates, how they migrate. I mean, you really start to appreciate them. They're also just a really good indicator of the seasons, and how you were saying, like, you're kind of watching the seasons change. Birds are very predictable, so your hummingbirds you probably recognize come back almost the same week, if not the same day, every year. And so it's just, they teach us a lot about nature, in a lot of different ways. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from birds. And of course, they're very cute and fun to watch. So first we're going to talk about bird watching and, why we do it, some benefits of it, and some tips for when you're out there bird watching. And then we'll talk about backyard bird feeding. So kind of two parts of the program. So first, here are some benefits or some reasons why you could go birding. The first would be accessibility. I think that's really cool about bird watching, is that it's accessible to everyone, young. So, like you said, Leo is not even 2 yet, and he's out there watching the birds. And then you have people who are living in like assisted living facilities who can look out the window and watch the birds. So it's accessible to all ages. Mobility, so even if you can't get up and go hike a trail, you can watch and sit out your window. So it's very accessible for lots of different folks. It's a great reason to get outdoors. I'm not the biggest outdoors person in the winter, but there's some good reasons when I know, like, there's certain birds that are only out in the winter. It makes me get out there. If you fill bird feeders in the winter, it's a good reason to get outside every day. So it's kind of some good motivation just to get outside. Connecting with nature, I kind of mentioned this already, but getting to know those patterns. If you keep track of your birds each year, you'll kind of get to know when certain trees are budding, when certain flowers are blooming. Everything's kind of timed together, and so you kind of get a little bit more connected that way. Just like in your backyard, you know which trees they're going to prefer to nest in, roost in. You just kind of get to know those things. Studies have shown that being outside and bird watching too improves mindfulness and mental sharpness. So studies were done with children spending time outdoors in nature, and they found that when they were older, they had the more time you spent in nature, the less likely you were to have depression, anxiety, substance abuse. So there's great mental health benefits to being outside. And bird watching is just very calming. You're not hiking to like break a sweat. You're just kind of out there. You're being quiet. You're listening. So it's a very like mindful kind of activity. It can be physical, so you can get out there and walk around. We had a gentleman who regularly visited Pokagon State Park, and he would come on a lot of our bird walks. And he was young, he was still in his 40s, and he ended up having to have bypass surgery. And when he was in that recovery stage, his doctor said go out and slowly walk, and that was what got him outside. Walking around, he would just go and do a little bit of birding here and there, and eventually he was up to hiking 3 and 4 miles at a time. So it was kind of good motivation for him to get in better shape. That was kind of an easy thing that he could do. And then kind of the social aspect of it, you get to meet other people. I know maybe when you guys are out camping, I don't know if people stop by your camper, they see your hummingbird feeder out.
Yeah.
Do you put feeders out at your campsite?
No, we can't. No. We can't, we just look at what's there.
Yeah. I know, just working at the nature center, people that come to the bird window, they just start chit-chatting, you kind of get to know, just like we're doing here today. There's a place on Lake Erie called McGee Marsh, and it's a park or nature preserve. And as the warblers are migrating over Lake Erie, they're tired and they're need to stop and rest, and they all kind of flock to this one area called McGee Marsh. So birders from all over the country go there, and they're lined up along this boardwalk, and everyone talks to each other and points out different birds to each other and shares equipment, and it's just a really cool way to get to meet new people and come together over a shared passion. And then something that we always say that if you know more about something, you're going to care more about it. So the more you know about birds, the more you're going to care about them and the habitats and their environments. And the more you care about it, the more you are willing to do something about it. So for example, the people at the park that would come bird watching with me, eventually, once they got to care about the park, they became park volunteers. And that kind of led them into more of that stewardship role. So just the more you know about it, the more you're likely to be an advocate for that.
Plus, it doesn't cost anything.
Yes.
You
that's
don't
a great
need
point.
equipment, you don't need uniforms.
Yeah. So what do I need this? So that's a great segue into this because there isn't very much that you need. So the first thing on my list is eyes and ears. And you don't even really need, both of those. I knew a gentleman he was legally blind and he did his birding all by ear. He became an expert at it, but he could sit at our bird window, which had a microphone, and he just watched the birds by listening to them. So eyes or ears, we should say. Comfortable shoes and clothes. It doesn't have to be anything fancy as long as it's, good for the weather. Layers are always good. Closed-toed shoes, probably. Binoculars, and I'll talk a little bit about binoculars in the next slide. But those don't have to be anything expensive either. You don't really need them unless you really want, a better look, but they are very nice to have. And it always is when you're out bird watching and you forget your binoculars, that's when you're going to see something that you want the binoculars for. Always. You bring them and then you don't see anything good. Field guides. So I brought a couple different field guides with me today. So field guides are manuals or books that you would take out with you when you're bird watching. Ideally, you want something that's not super heavy. So like the Encyclopedia of Birds that's sitting over there obviously wouldn't go in your backpack. You would be sweating up a storm. So you want something that's kind of lightweight. This one's kind of nice. It's just Michigan focused. It's got really clear pictures and it's easy to find the birds in them. So I'll just kind of pass those around. This is one that I just kind of this is the one I've just always used, the Peterson guide, and the more that I use it, the faster I am at finding things. And it's kind of nice, it has like in the back silhouettes of the birds. Sometimes when you're out watching, you can't get color because if it's backlit, you can't see the colors of the birds, you just see their shape. So it's got shapes of the birds, it's got their range maps. For some of the flying birds, they all fly. Well, unless you're a penguin or an ostrich. But the ones that are frequently soaring up high, they've got like what they would look like from down below in their shape. So that's kind of one that I like to use. The Peterson guide, the Sibley one is also similar to that one. And this is one that we have here at the library. This is Birds of North America. So this is going to cover a lot bigger of a range. But this one's kind of cool. It has like spots for note taking in the back. So this one, I don't know, it's kind of big for me, but I did think that one was kind of cool. So field guides, that's just going to help you when you're out there to ID those birds. And we'll talk a little bit about some electronic options for field guides too here in a second. Sun and bug protection, so Bob's hat would be perfect. Some sunscreen even in the winter time. Consider having a checklist, and I did print off some of these. A lot of birders keep life lists, so if you see a bird anytime in your life, you check it off your list and you kind of keep a life list. Some people keep just a yearly list, so every January they start fresh and they'll check off the birds as they see them throughout the year. So I printed this off. This is from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. They did something called Project Go back in the mid-2000s, but it's a list of birds you'd see in Michigan in June. So I thought if you want to take one of those, you're welcome to. That's going to cover all of Michigan. So of course there are birds that are up north right now that we don't have here, like loons and great gray owls and Kirkland's warblers. Those are all going to be further up north and not down our way. So technology, if you are a smartphone user, they've come out with just some really cool apps that you can use for bird watching. Two of the big ones, Audubon makes one that's really easy for identification. You kind of can plug in, let's say I see a bird and I can plug in the colors. Okay, this bird is orange and black, and I can select the size and I can select its habitat or what it was doing, and it'll kind of narrow it down based on where I am in the time of year and give me some options of what that bird could be. It also has the bird calls in there, which is really handy. And then there's an app called Merlin, and they actually have within their app a sound recording. If there's birds chirping, you just hold out your recorder and it'll ID the calls. It's a free app. It takes up quite a bit of space on your phone, but it's wonderful, and it's pretty accurate. And what's really cool is so let's say this cardinal is chirping every 10 seconds. It'll ID a cardinal, and then every time that cardinal chirps, it'll highlight that bird, so even if there's multiple birds calling, you can tell which one is which. So that's really cool.
That's called Merlin, isn't it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That takes all the fun out of it.
I know. But also, it kind of adds a little bit of fun, because sometimes I'll go out and I'm like, okay, what's out here? And then it's like, whoa, I've never seen that bird before. And then I spend lots of time trying to find it, which is really cool. So. And it kind of just also helps you practice those bird sounds too. A note on sounds. So one technique that people use is playing recorded calls of the birds to get them to show themselves to you. So there's a couple reasons that will happen. Okay, so birds call because they're establishing territory, they're trying to find a mate. And so if we play their call, they're going to think another one of their species is in the area. So they're either going to come out and defend their territory, or it might be a male thinking, hey, there's a female I want to check out. So if you play that call, it's cool because you might be able to see that bird, but we always caution people, you don't want to do that a lot because it could stress out the bird. If you have a female bird who's on a nest and she's leaving her nest to go see what you are, she's putting her eggs in danger, especially like owls, for example. They nest in cold weather. So if you call for an owl and she leaves her nest, her eggs, could freeze out there. So you don't really want to do it a whole lot in the breeding season. Maybe later in the summer or fall is a better time to do that. Or just do it once or twice, see what you get, and then be done with it. But that is kind of a good technique. Birders also do something called pishing, where you go out and you kind of make that sound, psh, 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 and certain sound birds, that's kind of interesting to them, and they'll kind of pop out and see what you are. So that's kind of a fun technique. Binoculars, I can spend a little bit of time. Are you guys interested in learning a little bit about binoculars and how to pick them out? I actually just bought these, and so I've kind of become a little more knowledgeable about selecting binoculars. But so binoculars come in all kind of shapes and sizes, of course. When you're bird watching, you want something that's light, and you don't want to be carrying around something that's big and bulky, but you also want something that's going to magnify well. So binoculars will have 2 numbers on them. It's usually kind of right in the middle here. This one says 8 by 42. So the 2 numbers, the first number is its magnification, so how many times closer that object's going to look to you. So with this one being an 8, if I see a bird, it's showing it to me 8 times closer. You would think the higher that number, the better, right? Because I can see things farther away. But for bird watching, 8's about the highest you want to go. Any more than that, when you're kind of searching around, your field of vision is a lot smaller. So if a bird's flying around, it's harder to like pinpoint it. So 8 is a good first number for bird watching. And then the second number, this one is 42. That is the size of the lens. So the higher the second number, the more light it lets in, and it does make it easier to see. But unfortunately, the bigger the lens, the heavier the binoculars become. So you probably don't want to go more than 50 for birding binoculars. So 8 by 42, 8 by 32 is a good size. If you wear glasses, so that's something to consider. You can see how the eyepieces pop out. So the lens is really close to that eyepiece there. Since I don't wear glasses, I need to put some distance between my eye and the lens. So I pop these out, and then that's a good distance. Oh. But if you wear glasses, there's already that little space, so you would close those up and put your eye there. Binoculars will move like this. If I were to look in there, you know, you'd see 2 circles. You kind of want to move it around until you get like 1 circle in your field of vision. And then there's 2 places that you can focus. Usually there's like a dial over one of the eyes, so you close like the opposite eye and get that lens focused in. And then this middle dial will kind of focus both of them together. So once you get it all focused and you're out there, usually just this middle wheel you can move around, and that'll focus it for you. Yeah, so that's kind of how to use them, how to focus them. And then just one quick tip for when you're using them. Of course, birds move all the time, so they don't play nice when you're trying to get eyes on them. But if I'm out, let's say that's that top of that flag, it's a bird. So I see the bird. What a lot of people do is they bring their eyes down, and then they go up, and then you're like trying to find it. So a good tip is to keep your eyes on the bird and then bring your binoculars up to your eyes, and that'll kind of keep it steady. But yeah, so those are a couple of tips. Another fun thing is if you have a bird that's holding still, you can also take your cell phone camera and hold it up to the eyepiece and get a decent photo through it of something zoomed in. But if you want to talk more about binoculars afterwards, I'm happy to do that if you want to come up and look at mine. I got these on REI, and you can kind of select like what activity you're doing, and then it kind of narrows it down on their website which ones are good for that activity. So whale watching, bird watching, hunting. And then I wanted to talk about bird watching and when you should do it. Of course, early morning is best. That's when birds are typically more active and they're more vocal. Couple reasons for this. The sun is coming up, so it's warming things up. A lot of our birds are insect eaters, so that's when the insects are going to get active, and that's when the birds are going to get active. Scientists have also kind of theorized that in today's world we have more traffic noise during the day, and so the birds are calling a little bit more before we're getting more active, so that they're kind of taking advantage of the quiet that way. But of course you can bird watch any time of day, but early morning and evening you're just going to have a little bit more activity. Of course, any season is good. They all have their benefits, but spring and fall are particularly special because of that migration season. So you have birds that are coming from, in the spring, they're coming from south to north. So especially where we live, we're getting a lot of birds traveling through that we don't have here year round. So you only have maybe a couple week window to get to see those birds until the fall. So spring and fall are pretty active times to watch for birds. But winter is good because there aren't any leaves on the trees. So it's easier to find the birds out in the winter. But of course it's colder. They're not calling as much because they're not breeding. So they're a little bit quieter then. Summer's a little bit difficult for us. It's hot, there's mosquitoes, there's leaves on the trees, but you can go out to like lakes and wetlands and see probably more birds in the summer than you would in the winter time. These are a few birds these are all migrating birds, but yellow warblers, we have these here right now, but they're gonna come up about May and probably stay till like October. The common loon will just pass through, so we'll get them usually around March. They're in our area. They'll stop on our lakes and hang out for a few days and eat and rest, and then they'll continue on northward. So that's always a special time. It's usually late March, I think they're through. And then, do you guys have these by your houses, sandhill cranes? Some people love them, some people hate them. But they're interesting. They're one of our first returners. So they come back late February is when they start showing up. And they'll stay sometimes till October, November. And some are even staying like in Indiana year round now just because we have warmer climates. But they're a fun one to watch for. They're a good sign of spring when they're visiting. I could do a whole hour just on those guys. They're a fun bird. And then pretty much anywhere you're gonna find birds, but you wanna think about variety of habitat. So different birds like different places. So lakes, wetlands, forests, fields are going to have different species there. I always suggest if you're in a field, look at the edges. Birds are trying to protect themselves, so they're going to stay on those edges and then pop out to feed and jump back in. So those edge habitats are really important and good places to look for them. Of course, parks and nature preserves, because they're protected, you're going to just have more variety there. But your backyards and the nature centers, of course, are great places. Like I said, ours had an observation window with lots of feeders. So those can be all good places to go. Campgrounds.
What?
Campgrounds.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this part we'll talk about attracting birds to your backyard. Do you guys have any questions yet? Okay. So yeah. Birds need a few things to be attracted to your yard. Just like us, they all need food, water, and shelter. So we're going to talk about some different ways that you can provide those things for them. Let's see. But first we're going to talk about our common backyard birds that are all here year-round. So you can shout them out if you know them. This guy?
Cardinal.
Robins.
This side of Michigan.
They're not all here.
They are and they aren't. So robins are here year round, but they'll get in big flocks and they'll
Go deep.
they'll roost. Yeah, go deep in the woods and hide out. But they'll stick around. They're kind of like bluebirds. They'll migrate a little bit to where they'll find some food. So they might go a little bit south, but you can find robins in the winter. Also, the Canadian robins will come down to Michigan. We're like their Florida. So sometimes you see a robin in the winter, you're like, oh, it's a Canadian robin. That's not two different species. They're all the same. Easy one.
Chickadee?
Yep. Chickadee's easy. They say their name, right? Chickadee dee dee.
Nuthatch? No. Tufted titmouse?
Yep, tufted titmouse. So they've got that little tuft on their head, but often competes with the nuthatch.
Red poles, aren't they?
Nope, but they're similar. This is just a house finch,
Oh, okay.
but they're year-round and they're a very common feeder bird. They look very similar to a purple finch, but purple finches are only here in the winter time. And that's male and female, just like with the cardinal.
That's a red finch.
House finch. This one?
Or do a yellow fin?
That's the yellow one.
Yeah, or goldfinch. Yep, goldfinch. And they're here year round, but sometimes people don't know they're year round because the male loses all that bright yellow in the winter. They're kind of like a drab greenish brown. So sometimes people will be like, they'll used to call us at the nature center and say, when are my goldfinches gonna come back? I'm like, they're there, they just don't look like themselves.
Downy
Downy
woodpecker.
woodpecker.
Yeah.
I
And
see
then,
them up my suet almost every day.
good.
What
Yeah.
type of woodpecker is that?
Downy.
Downy.
Downy woodpecker.
So they're our smallest woodpecker. We have 7 woodpecker species. 6 of those are year round. And then with these guys, the red indicates male. The female won't have any red on her head. But they're probably your most common that you'll see around.
Nothing morning dew.
Morning dove, right? The sound of summer.
I'll wake up to them every day.
Yes,
They
they're so
roost on
beautiful.
my storage shed.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then,
Nuthatch.
yep, your little white-breasted nuthatch.
What's that?
Nuthatch.
Oh, nuthatch.
Yeah, they'll go up and down the tree,
Oh,
Upside down.
back upward, back down,
oh, okay.
Yep.
head up, head down.
We often say they're like an upside-down woodpecker. So
Yeah.
they're doing the same thing, but just upside down.
Interesting.
Yeah, the mourning doves are good ground feeders. They clean up underneath your bird feeder.
Ah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep. And often in the evening they show up. Same thing with the cardinals. If you watch right at dusk, they'll head to your feeders. Okay, so here are some foods that you can use to attract. Of course, a variety of food is going to attract a variety of birds. So seeds and nuts. I always warn against those mixes, like the wild mix. They have a lot of corn and they have a lot of millet. And it's, corn is fine, there's birds that eat corn, but you're also going to attract a lot of squirrels that way.
And
Which,
birds sort through it too.
yeah, they kick a lot of it off onto
Waste
the
a lot.
ground.
I
So
wonder
yeah,
if
lots
they're doing that.
They
wasted.
waste a lot.
So I think the best bang for your buck is always black oil sunflower. A lot of different birds like it, and it's not that expensive. I know it is a little messy because they'll break the shell, and of course then you get the shell all over the ground. You can buy it out of the shell, but it's very pricey, so it's like caviar for birds. Safflower, this white one up here, is a good one. It's a little bit pricier, but it attracts cardinals. Your mourning doves like it. A little bit of like your better birds, I guess you would say. And then squirrels don't like that one. So if you're trying to deter squirrels, you can put the
What's that one again?
safflower,
Oh, safflower.
the white one. In the winter, your juncos, dark-eyed juncos like it too on the ground. And then peanuts, these are peanuts in and out of the shell. Just make sure that they're unsalted. Your suet, so you can do a homemade suet, but basically suet is like lard or fat. And of course you could buy those suet cakes. But especially in the winter, with seeds and nuts and the suet, they're all providing fat to the birds. Birds are interesting because they need fat on their body to survive the winter, but they can't have too much because they'll be too heavy to fly. It's like there's this like really important balance that they're trying to keep. But that's a great way to attract your woodpeckers. Blue jays will eat your suet. I feel like sometimes surprising birds eat your suet. Red-winged blackbirds sometimes eat suet. But I'm going to provide you guys with a homemade recipe that you can take with you today too. Insects, so a lot of our birds are not seed eaters, they're insect eaters. So if you want a different variety of birds, put out some insects. That top picture is dried mealworms. Bluebirds love that. Took us about 3 years of putting those out consistently at the Nature Center before bluebirds showed up to it, but they finally found it. And then once they did, they were there all the time. And a little bit of a trick for buying mealworms, if you buy them in the bird feeding section, like if you go to like Rural King or Tractor Supply, a little bag like this is going to be, I don't know, maybe $10. But if you go to the chicken feed section, you get like a big bag for not much more. So go to the
Same
chicken
thing.
feed. Yeah, same thing. It's just
Okay.
like marketed different.
Good to know.
And then of course just making your yard insect friendly, so not using pesticides, letting native plants grow or planting native plants. Those are going to help attract birds too. A lot of birds eat caterpillars, so if you have like a butterfly garden, that's going to be nice for your birds. Not so much for your
good
butterflies. But it benefits everybody. But a lot of your birds too, like eat the seeds that, these flowers eventually go to seed, and then some of your birds come and eat those seeds. So it kind of attracts everybody. Of course, you can provide your sugar water or flowers that provide nectar. Fruit, so your Baltimore Orioles are going to love your oranges, grape jelly, they love grape jelly. And then of course you could plant fruit-bearing plants, so bushes that have berries. This is a red cedar, your cedar waxwings will like those. These are actually the pine cone of the cedar tree. They just look like little blueberries, but the birds are going to like those. And then really important to provide clean water for them. So if you have a bird bath, making sure it's cleaned out daily. Something really nice, if you have the ability, is to create a moving water feature. So your hummingbirds, you can buy like a little mister for your bird bath, and your hummingbirds will play around in that. And then making it heated in the winter. You can buy a heated bird bath. You can buy just like a heated dog bowl that sits on the ground. But your bluebirds, because they are here in the winter, you just don't see them, but they'll come to your bird bath in the winter to use that. And then I'll quickly kind of go through some different types of feeders. So birds are all made differently, their feet, some birds are perching birds, clinging birds, more ground feeders. So all the different types of feeders are going to attract different birds. So this is what's called a hopper feeder. It's going to sit off the ground and have a platform with kind of like a little roof over it. These are the birds that it'll attract. This is a rose-breasted grosbeak. Probably the same day that your hummingbirds come back, your grosbeaks are going to come back. They're like always together. This is called a cylinder feeder, so these are kind of your clinging birds, goldfinches. They're going to put their little beak in there and pull those seeds out. And that's kind of nice because your squirrels, that hopper feeder, if a squirrel gets on that, it's gone. So putting a baffle on that is going to help, making sure it's far from trees so the squirrels can't jump. I think squirrels can jump something like 10 to 15 feet. So, but yeah, so your cylinder feeder. This is similar, but this is more of a seed tube, so these just have little perches on the side for them. Your finches, sometimes your woodpecker, your nuthatch, your chickadee. Of course, your nectar feeder is going to do hummingbirds, but orioles too will also go to your hummingbird feeder. It doesn't have to be orange, they'll figure it out. And a couple things about your hummingbird feeder, this shows red water inside. You're really not supposed to add food coloring, so just your 1 part sugar, 4 parts water. And then another tip, these have a yellow center. Scientists have figured out that bees are really attracted to these if they have a yellow center. So if you buy one that has just the red center, you won't get as many bees around your nectar. So a couple tips there. You can also buy just like an oriole feeder, but it's the same solution, that sugar water. These are really fun, your peanut feeders. So this one we had at the Nature Center, and it's just a hoot to watch birds on this. I actually never saw a cardinal, so the picture is very deceiving. It's usually your woodpeckers, your blue jays are going on here, but it's kind of like a slinky that's rounded, and you fill it with peanuts, and then they go up and pull the peanuts out. And once they find it, though, those peanuts go fast. So be ready to spend your money on peanuts. And then this one is just kind of more for your shelled peanuts there. But yeah, all of your nut-eating birds, nuthatch, blue jay. I wanted to put up here the red-headed woodpecker. That's probably one of our most uncommon woodpeckers, but they loved this feeder at the Nature Center when we had them. You're probably only going to have redheads if you have old oak trees. They need acorns in their diet. So if you've got lots of oaks on your property, you might.
We do see red-headed woodpeckers
Oh,
quite often.
good,
Yeah,
good.
we do.
In Indiana, they're a species of concerns. They're not doing well down there, but probably Michigan a little bit better.
Is the pileated woodpecker still down by the Nature Center?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're going to talk about them here too, and how to attract those, because a lot of people ask. Oh, there it is. So suet feeders, that's usually what our pileated would come to, is our suet feeders. These are a couple different styles, kind of like your traditional, just like single cage one where they cling on the side. This one is nice because they have to go upside down, and your sparrows and other stuff that might clean this out, they can't hang upside down, so really only your woodpeckers can eat off of that one. So if you're finding
What's in that?
just suet, one of those
No,
suet.
but I mean that one up there.
Yep, there's a suet.
That's also suet? Oh,
Yeah, you take
okay.
the roof off, but it just lays this way, and the
okay.
cage is underneath.
Okay.
But for your pileated, a lot of people will put this out and want to get a pileated, but here's why that isn't going to work so well. They need something to prop their tail against.
Yeah.
So if they cling on that, they're just going to kind of like swing around, and it's really hard for them to like rear their head back and peck at that suet. So you want to put either put it on a tree where they can like lean up against it, or they actually sell double suet feeders with a tail prop just specifically for these bigger woodpeckers. So yeah, but I love it. It's like their little kickstand.
Yeah.
Do you guys see those at your house?
No, but my sister saw one in the park up here, which is kind of unusual. And I mean, years ago, they were surprised at Pokagon that they had one that far north.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're getting them even up in Michigan.
I saw one down the swamp 3-4 years ago.
Okay. I really think, the emerald ash borer, what was that, 20 years ago? I know that was devastating to our trees, but I think when that went through, the woodpeckers kind of flourished because they had all this
They had
extra
all
food
this-
to eat.
Yeah.
So I think since then they've kind of seen an increase in woodpeckers. And then of course your tray feeder, that's going to attract lots of different species, but your sparrows, your red-winged blackbirds, spring and fall will kind of gravitate towards those tray feeders. And then aside from your food, you also want to provide some shelter. So if you just have like an open yard with a bird feeder in the middle, your birds are going to be real skittish about going to that because they're going to fall prey to maybe a hawk or something like that. So they need some cover to feel safe. So of course trees and shrubs. Again, just be mindful of your squirrels. They can jump, so you might want to keep your bird feeder a little bit further from the tree. If you're going to plant something for cover, you might as well put something with some fruit and flowers on it because that's going to attract, your fruit eaters and your nectar drinkers. So get a little bang for your buck there. Consider evergreens, so a white cedar. Birds love those in the winter time. That's great cover for the winter. But unfortunately, deer like to eat those, so they're hard when you first start them out. You got to protect them from your deer. Hollow logs, like you see this little screech owl hanging out in. Brush piles. Okay, your little birds will kind of hop in there and hang out in between going to your feeder, your bird bath. And then nest boxes, even when they're not nesting, like in the wintertime, groups of birds will go into these and just group together and hang out. Even birds of different species will kind of hang out together in your nest boxes. And then we're just about to the end here, but we're gonna just kind of talk about doing some responsible things with your bird feeders. So of course you want to clean them regularly. Was it last summer? I guess it was 2 summers ago. Do you remember there was like a ban on bird feeding in the summer?
Yeah.
This like mysterious illness was going around, and they're finding dead birds
It
everywhere.
still is, actually.
Yeah, they never really figured it out, although I did kind of hear a theory. But they were really asking people at first, wash your feeders with a bleach solution. And I really linked it to like, we went through a pandemic and they had a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same thing. It was like, spread out your feeders, clean them. It was like everything we were doing, stay 6 feet apart. So just kind of keep that in mind about germs and stuff. Like the same thing applies to your bird feeders. And by the way, the theory on that, again, this is just a theory with that bird pandemic. They kind of found, do you remember that was the year of like the 17-year cicadas were all coming out that year? And when they took the maps of where the cicadas emerged and the maps of where most of the bird deaths were, they were almost identical.
Is that right?
So the theory was that possibly those cicadas that they were eating were contaminated or something like that. So again, that's just a theory, but because once that kind of passed, it kind of seemed to go away. Let's see, keeping your seed fresh and dry to prevent mold. Sometimes we fill up a big feeder and they don't eat it fast enough, so you just gotta be mindful to watch it, make sure it's not getting moldy. Keeping your seed away from rodents and kind of like plastic containers, keep it closed. Washing your hands after feeding so that you're not getting their germs. House finches, for example, are really prone to conjunctivitis, pink eye, and so you want to wash your hands so you're not spreading
You mean
that.
they get it or you get it?
Both, but they get it.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
that's like, for whatever reason, that species, you'll see them sometimes with like these
Oh.
gross, crusty eyes. You just want to make sure and remember that they're carrying germs and they're all congregating in this one area, so washing your hands. Preventing window strikes. If your feeders are close to your window, if they get spooked, boom, all of a sudden they're gonna fly and hit your window. So you could put like those little clingy decorative things on your window. That's probably the best thing to do. Don't clean your windows as often. That's a great reason to not clean your windows. And then keeping your cats indoors. So cats are like one of the #1 killers of birds. So if you're able to, I have a cat that likes to dart out the door, and I'm always like, don't kill the baby birds. But yeah, keeping your cats indoors can help with that too. So just do like this, tease your cat with a little chickadee feeder. And again, these are just some helpful resources. Wild Birds Unlimited is a chain of bird feeder stores, but the people that work there are wonderful. I'm not like endorsed by them, but their feeders are top notch and they're lifetime guaranteed. So if a squirrel gets on there and breaks it, you take it in, they'll either fix it or replace it. So they're wonderful. I'm not sure where the nearest one in Michigan is, but there's one in Fort Wayne. So the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, that's who runs the Merlin app. So they have a really nice website for bird ID. Same thing with Audubon. And then there's a really cool app for your phone called Seek by iNaturalist. And if you like to go out in the woods and walk around, this is great to have on your phone. You can scan things. It can be a bird, it could be a mushroom, a flower. You just hold your phone over it and it uses your camera to ID it. So it's not 100% accurate, but it at least gets you in the right direction. It might say, hey, this is a woodpecker, or this is a, certain type of mushroom. And then you can go to your guide and kind of look it up. But that's a really fun app to play around with. Then I'm going to leave you with a really embarrassing photo, but it's a really fun photo. So this was at the Nature Center. We did a bird banding seminar, and they said, Nikki, do you want to release this bird? And so they put the bird on my hand after he had been banded. They put him upside down because the bird will sit there for a second. And then when it perked up, it looked at me and it bit my hand and flew away. And so that's me getting bitten. And what's funny is I'm like, I feed you every day. So he was literally biting the hand that feeds him. But I wanted to end with this because I don't know, this just shows you how fun birding can be. Yeah, even if you're not holding it in your hand. I just think it's an exciting thing, and it can be a lot of fun and just a good way to get outside and learn more about nature.
How about feeding birds, and like if we go to Florida in the winter, are you not supposed to get them started at your feeders if you're going to be gone?
Yeah, in the winter they really say you should keep up on it because the birds will rely on it. If the temperatures it's like a polar vortex, they're going to be okay. They'll find food elsewhere. You just might find when you come back it'll take them a while to find it again. But in those really, really cold snaps, like they really rely on your food and your heated bird bath. So, if you're gonna be gone for a long period of time, I don't know.
Well, we don't feed a lot. We put out a little bit.
Yeah.
When it's gone, it's gone. It's not like somebody could not rely totally on that.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not that much, but.
But we're getting to where we want to be out of Michigan longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So I'd say if it's just a little bit, they're not relying on that anyway, so you're probably okay to still feed them. In the summer, they've got so much to eat, and fall, because fall things are going to seed. There's so many other seeds out there.
And I've been putting suet all year round, and so we get woodpeckers, all sorts of birds coming to that.
Yeah.
And that's okay?
Yep.
They're not, it's not a bad thing to feed suet year round?
No.
Okay.
I've never seen an obese woodpecker is eating suet all day. So they kind of know.
Well, that's a good way to see some birds, but not have it you know, they're flocking in. It's a good way to see some birds, and it's an easy way.
Yeah, in the suet they have to like hold still for a while, you know, so
Yeah.
like it's a good way to observe them while they're taking their time on it. Raccoons do love it though, so you gotta have to. That happened to us at the nature center. We would have to pull in our suet every night because the raccoons would just like take the whole cakes and run away with it.
Yeah.